Weekday Warriors of Wrestling from March 11, 2021. You know, Patrick, I was all prepared to come on this show and rip AEW apart for Revolution, for the underwhelming signing, for the lack of exploding ring, for all the stuff that happened on Sunday. And I had this rant prepared. I was gonna, I was gonna have a rant like the time they had the Dark Order beat down the Elite on that December, I think it was 18th, 2019 episode. I had it all ready to go. And then last night they put on Dynamite and had such a great closing angle and such a great cover for a lot of the stuff that happened last night that my rage totally dissipated. And I'm like in a totally different mood than I was Monday morning.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Revolution, there were two major missteps on that pay-per-view. We're going to talk about that in great detail. That really kind of soured the event for a lot of people because generally I thought the show was pretty entertaining for the most part, but those two balls that they dropped were so big that it had a major negative impact on the show as a whole. And it really kind of soured me on how they were going to follow it up on Dynamite. And I'll be honest, I thought as a whole, the episode was kind of iffy, but man, did they end strong with that angle. I was like, okay, I'm on board with this. So let's see where that goes.
Yeah. And let's go into chronological order, I guess. So let's start with Revolution and then go into Dynamite and talk about that. I'm pulling up the results just so I have them in front of me. So this, by far, this was my least favorite AEW pay-per-view I've ever seen. I've seen them all. All Out 2020 was not a great one, but this just left such a bad taste in my mouth that I was just like, I had been, as a giant AEW fan, I had never been less enthused with AEW than after this show. So we had the opener, we had Britt Baker. You know what? Let's just talk about the main thing first. Let's go into this. I'm not even going to talk about the explosion. I'm going to start with the signing of Christian Cage. Mm-hmm. This has kind of, I think, split the fans that I've seen. I've seen a lot of people say, hey, I love Christian. He checks all the boxes. He's a Hall of Fame talent. He's a former world champion. He's a big name, yada, 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 yada. And I've seen other people say, oh, it was a letdown. I thought it was going to be something bigger. And I fall on that side of the coin. I fall on the letdown side. And I'll tell you why I think that. AEW has never announced a big signing and hyped up a big signing, especially for a pay-per-view. There's been three major signings, I think, that have happened. Moxley, Sting, and Big Show. Moxley came as the big surprise ending of Double or Nothing on a show that many people, I think, still say is the best show AEW's ever produced. Sting came at Winter is Coming, which, once again, I think people will say is one of the best shows AEW's ever produced. And Big Show just showed up on Twitter and then came out last week on Dynamite. When they've brought other people in, whether it's been like Miro as the best man, there's never been a large amount of hype. And in a lot of cases, that's smart because what you want to do as a promoter of anything is under promise and over deliver. It's just like you're just setting expectations and managing those expectations. So I've seen a lot of people say, well, you know what? They didn't hype it up that much. They just said these things and Christian is those things. So technically they're correct. Well, if they're correct, why are so many people upset? The reason is because when you have Big Show, who is a bigger name than Christian, is a bigger star than Christian. I like Christian. I like Christian. I would rather watch a Christian match than a Big Show match. Like, I think he's a better worker than Big Show, but Big Show's a bigger star. Like that's a fact. When you have him signed on Twitter on a random like Tuesday afternoon or whatever, and like it gets covered in like all sorts of like publications and things, and And then he comes on and says, hey, guess what? We're having a major star, a Hall of Fame worthy talent. What do you think your head's going to go to? Is it going to go to somebody who is, or is it like the Hall of Fame? And I know you can like, we can debate over that definition multiple times, but the fact is, you're thinking Brock Lesnar, you're thinking CM Punk, you're thinking John Cena, you're thinking Dave Bautista, you're thinking Bill Goldberg. Like you're thinking one of these names that is very that are big. And the reason is because you're like, oh, well, it's got to be bigger than Big Show. It's got to be bigger than Sting. They didn't announce those guys. They didn't put them on a pay-per-view. AEW has a pretty good track record for like, managing expectations. So you're like, oh, this should be a real thing. And then it's Christian. And to me, it's like you set yourself up for such an issue here because you did it to increase buys, but like, once again, it's been a mixed reaction at best. And, you also set up Christian for failure. I don't have an issue with AEW signing Christian. I think that's fine. Like, whatever. I have a problem with them setting it up to be somebody of a much larger caliber. And the idea, there's been this response from people that, oh, all the other options were unrealistic. What does that mean? What does unrealistic mean? Unrealistic because they wouldn't sign? Like, I don't know. Nobody's pitched to them. Like, they're unrealistic because why? And then, you say like, oh, well, Vince would match any money offer Brock had. CM Punk, he doesn't seem to want to wrestle. Oh, like John Cena's really loyal to WWE. And to me, those are excuses. And those are people, I'm an AEW fan. I don't think there's any reason AEW shouldn't be able to get top tier talent. And I refuse to believe that like, oh, they're just guys that won't come over. Did WCW not get Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Lex Luger, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, who are all of the level of Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, John Cena, Batista, all those guys? They got them. And then, I've heard so many excuses for that. They're like, oh, well, those were disgruntled stars that had an issue with Vince. You mean like CM Punk? You mean a disgruntled star like CM Punk? Or oh, they just wanted the money. You mean like Brock Lesnar? Like all these guys, like it's insane. Like Vince would just match whatever offer they came to Brock with. Well, I don't know, make him match it. Throw him an offer. I don't know. CM Punk is begging. He is begging to be pitched to. If you've heard his interview on Renee, oral sessions with Renee, he talks about, he's like, would you consider a return? He's like, I'd be open to it if there was a really good story. So the option isn't, or the course of action is to not do anything. It's to either offer him a lot of money or offer him a great story. We know Tony Khan's a fan, so make a pitch. And for those people who are like, well, they don't need to sign these old stars, that's fine, but they just fucking signed Christian Cage and Big Show. So that doesn't hold water. If you're going to sign big names, sign big names. But this excuse that it's unrealistic, for who? How is it unrealistic? Make him an offer.
Yeah, and I'll go back to what you said earlier. Like, I'm at a point with Christian where I would actually rather see a Big Show match than a Christian match, because Big Show at least has the appeal of being so big and gigantic. That's like, oh, I wonder what Kenny Omega could do with somebody like that. But Christian, you kind of know what you're going to get. It's like, I've seen it, going on over 2.5 decades now. But I'm with you. AEW really set themselves up for this level of disappointment because they're the ones that set the stage for it. We said it on this show. It's like, all right, if they announce Big Show signing with little to no fanfare, and then Big Show comes out and says, oh, we've got an even bigger one. Well, he didn't use those words, but, we've got a big one coming at the pay-per-view. Yeah, honestly, they should have probably just saved Big Show for the pay-per-view and just done it that way.
I agree. I think that's more of an impact. Like I wonder if it's like younger people or something, because there's this weird sense that these like attitude era mid-carders, I don't mean that derogatorily or in a derogative sense, but like when Matt Hardy came over, people are like, well, Matt Hardy's he's a big star. He was a star in a key era of wrestling. And I'm like, well, okay, so like we should get Scotty 2 Hotty, like just because you existed during the time period, like it's the same, like TNA was signing like Val Venus and Orlando Jordan because they happened to be in WWE, and it's like that's our criteria. Like Matt Hardy, like, I mean, yeah, I guess he helped pop a rating his like first show, but that was it. And Christian, like you said, I would probably rather see a Big Show match, because I've seen Christian have like really good matches. I like Christian a lot. I thought his 04-05 run was really good. I thought he was fine in TNA. He didn't really do anything for the numbers, so like there's that. And for people who are saying, well, now with Christian, they've got somebody that can teach these young guys. They've got fucking Arn Anderson and Jake Roberts and Tully Blanchard and Billy Gunn, and like, really, that's what we're signing him for? No, we're not. We're signing him to compete in top matches, like with Kenny Omega. So I'm fine with it. I really am. I think it's like, it doesn't excite me, but it doesn't like piss me off either. My problem was how it was set up.
Yeah, and that's AEW's got no one to blame but themselves for that one. That was just, and I don't know, they had this inaccurate sense of how big of a star Christian really is. Because I'll be honest, I thought Christian was already retired. I thought it was like, oh, well, he's done. He might do a match here or there, every so often, but his big days, his best days are done. And when TNA signed Christian in 05, that felt like a bigger deal, because he was coming off of he was in the prime of his career. He was coming off of a run in WWE where he got over and they wouldn't push him for God knows what reason. And it felt like TNA could kind of take advantage of that and piggyback off of that. So that felt like a bigger deal. This just kind of felt like they signed another Christopher Daniels. And again, I'm not knocking Christopher Daniels, but that's a guy who's in the latter stages of his career, doesn't work or wrestle much, but is there generally to just have good matches with the younger talents and help produce. I understand he's really big into producing behind the scenes. So, if they were going to bring Christian on board, I would expect him to be in that kind of role, not in a top tier role where he's going to be main eventing, and certainly not in a role where he'd be a major surprise and a major coup for AEW is a big sign.
Yeah. So that was my big issue with the show. And then the other one was the one that I think people were, more in agreement on, and that was the ending to the World Championship match and the exploding barbed wire death match. And I mean, this, unlike the Christian Cage thing, this is nobody's fault. This is just unfortunate luck. But I would imagine if you're listening to the show, you've seen the pay-per-view or heard the results or whatever. But in case you haven't, Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley fought in an exploding barbed wire death match, which I thought was good. I don't think it was as good as their lights out match was. And at the end, the ring was going to explode. And Eddie Kingston comes down to save Moxley in this like really well-written and well-conceived moment. And then the explosions go off and they're like sparklers and they look like shit and it's embarrassing. And like it was the most embarrassing time I've ever had watching an AEW event.
Yeah, and I don't know what exactly happened, because I would feel like if the explosion itself doesn't look that good, that is something that you would hopefully catch on like a walkthrough before the show or something, make sure everything's in place. And it was just the most baffling thing I've ever seen from an AEW pay-per-view. I was like, what on earth just happened? Are they selling this like they just died or something? And it was not good for anybody involved. And again, I don't know exactly what went wrong or what it was supposed to look like at the end of the show, but it did not get over with the impact that they were hoping for sure.
And so from what I understand, they did run through it and it went fine. But I mean, there may have been wind. And on top of that, I think the smoke stuff was all supposed to go off at the same time. So then the smoke is going around the ring, and this, like, then it like looks like something actually happened. But that didn't happen. It was staggered and looked terrible. And they're outdoors, and there's like wind, and like, oh boy. Yeah. And like, I mean, I've never seen an AEW audience boo like a storyline or something, like when they're not supposed to boo. And this was the first, and I'm like, holy shit, that is bad. So I thought it was unfortunate because it's what we're going to remember of this match, and I thought they worked pretty hard to make the match good. So I think that's unfortunate for them. And like Moxley, who's a hard worker and has wanted to go out in a blaze of glory, didn't get that. So yeah, it was the other major bad thing. But let's get into the rest of the show. The show opened on the pre-show with Britt and a surprise appearance from Maki Ito against Riho and Thunder Rosa. And like
the match
Ito
filled with the girls who should have been in the title match.
Oh, I know, right? We're finally getting a women's division here. It's taken a while. It's taken getting some Japanese talent over. It's taken getting a lot of these people's characters developed. But we're at the point where they have a pretty deep women's division. And as we'll see on Dynamite next week, as we saw the thing, Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker in a lights out match to main event the show. Although I guess they're not technically main eventing because it's a lights out match, but all technicalities aside, it will be the final match on the card, which is cool for them. And I think I think it's great, and I think it's great for both of those ladies who have worked really hard and done a great job.
Yeah, and you would like to see that match or their big grudge match get the pay-per-view spot, because the title match, and we'll get into that later, but I couldn't have possibly cared any less about that title match. But yeah, whenever Britt Baker's on TV, I'm going to care. Whenever Thunder Rosa's on TV, I'm going to care. So they need to put their trust in, and their backing behind the right people, I think.
Yeah, I thought this match was fine.
It was a tag match. Like, it was a pre-show tag match. That's all it was.
Yeah. Then we opened up the pay-per-view proper with the Young Bucks defending the tag titles against Jericho and MJF. I thought this was great. I thought it was the best match of the show, unless I'm not thinking of something. And the Bucks, to me, one of the things they have been able to do consistently for like the last few pay-per-views is I guess they didn't do it at Full Gear, but they did it All Out. And that's open up a show and get it going. This was such a hot tag. I thought there was a good story in it. It was just a classic tag team wrestling match, and I really liked it. I thought it was the best match of the show.
Yeah, I loved it too. A lot of good action, and you had Jericho and MJF to kind of play the heels and do all the dirty old school kind of heel tactics. So I thought they meshed together pretty well.
Yeah. Then we had the Casino Tag Team Royale. I saw a lot of people were split on this. I liked it. I thought it was fine. I thought Jungle Boy looked great. I probably would have had him go over because he was really over there. And but they're doing this thing. It's almost like a Kota Ibushi thing with Jungle Boy, Patrick, where he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride, and he gets really close with a lot of these things, but he never seems to win the big one. I feel like that's intentional, but they are getting him over as a lovable underdog.
Yeah, he was probably the shining star in this thing. Although the other guy who did really well in this was Phoenix, who, as we've put over in the past, is a hell of an athlete and a hell of a star. So I don't mind him getting the win for his team either. So they brought it down to the two best options, as it turns out.
Yeah. We had Shida and Ryo Mizunami. I was so bored during this thing. I have to say, there was hardly a story build up to this. This was probably the least interesting challenger they could have selected. I guess Shida just goes over, but this could have been shorter. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that? or is that?
No, I used this match as both a bathroom break and I took a quick nap. That's nice. That's how I felt about
my God. I know. By the way, they need to pull these things back a little bit, because I'm I was falling asleep during the main events, not because I was like bored or anything, just because they're fucking long. They don't need to be 4 hours. They used to be 3 hours, and I wish they would go back to that.
Yeah, that would be nice. But the era of wrestling we live in, everybody's just got this mindset of it's got to be longer. It's got to be longer. But for those of you Muppet fans out there who saw the latest Muppet movie, Muppets Most Wanted, they do a whole thing on that of putting a show together and how going longer and being self-indulgent isn't always the best way to go. So learn from the Muppets.
Yeah, it's like I'll give you the same amount of money for you to provide less stuff. So like, just do that.
Yeah.
I have to like work the next day. All right. So then we had Miro and Kip Sabian against Best Friends. We didn't have the breakup that you predicted, Patrick, of Miro going on his own. I guess I don't know. This was a match. Like, it was fine.
It was nice to see Miro kind of tear through everybody. I like that it started backstage with, Orange Cassidy getting hurt, and the faces never really recovered from that. Although, as we found out on Dynamite this week, we're going to be getting a rematch, so we'll see how that goes. But it was nice to see Miro actually look like a beast for once. And for that, I thought he came off just fine.
Yeah. Then we had the big money match. Hangman Adam Page took on Matt Hardy. I really wanted this to just be a squash. It didn't have to go 15 minutes. I don't think everybody trashes Jericho and accurately about his physique, but like Matt Hardy's not in good shape either. And the idea that he's competing with Hangman Page is always, I think, insulting. So I'm just like, let's move Matt Hardy into a manager role, and or if he wants to be a creative force, let's let him be a writer or something. I don't know, but I don't need constant featured Matt Hardy matches in 2021. I can't believe I'm saying that.
I would agree with that, but I did generally enjoy what they put together, and I thought the finish was really cool with the Dark Order. Catching Hangman, putting him up on the apron to set up the buckshot. I thought that was pretty cool. So I generally enjoyed the match for what it was.
Yeah, no, I like the finish too. Yes, I enjoyed the finish. That's true. We had the Face of the Revolution ladder match for the future TNT Championship match, and all you had to do was get the Chaos Emerald ring hanging above the ladder.
I heard so many jokes about that ring. I've heard Chaos Emerald. I've heard the big one that I kept hearing was Mount Doom, and it's a ring worthy of being chucked into Mount Doom and all sorts of things like that. So a lot of Tolkien fans.
Yeah, I thought it was stupid looking. For those, everybody's like, they're taking a shot at WWE. I'm like, well, I mean, yes, they probably are, but the WWE is not the only one that says brass ring. It's a common saying, but yes, they probably are doing that. It is stupid. That said, I thought Ethan Page, I was happy with him as a surprise compared to Christian Cage.
See, that's how you do it.
Yeah. Then there's
when you get
no
someone with
expectations
promise that's not a big name, you just throw them out there and see if you can get a pop. That's all.
Yeah. Like Cage, I feel like I was way more excited for Cage than I was for Christian. This Brian Cage as opposed to Christian Cage. I thought the match was good. I thought Scorpio was the choice to give it to, because you can do Archer and Darby down the road. We've seen Cody and Darby. It could have been Penta. I picked Penta. Max Caster isn't ready yet. Ethan Page just debuted. I think what they did with him the next night, we'll skip ahead here, where he fails again, is an interesting story, because Darby failed many, many times with Cody and Jericho and those guys, and he just kept at it and he eventually won. Scorpio, he's failed with Jericho, he's failed with Cody, he's failed with Darby, but instead of just keeping at it, he turned, and I thought it's kind of the next step for him, and it made sense from a character arc. So I think both this match and the next night helped Scorpio a lot, and it's an interesting story that they're telling.
Yeah, I was with you. I was kind of hoping Penta would win, but then they ended up doing something probably more interesting with him on Dynamite later in the week anyway. And so Scorpio was a good choice. And then the heel turn that they did on Dynamite kind of surprised me. It's like, oh, let's see where they go with this. So, as far as the match goes, it was the typical spot festy, bodies flying all over the place type of ladder match. You've seen one, you've seen them all, but it was generally entertaining.
Yeah. Then we had the street fight. We had Darby Allin and Sting against Cage and Starks with, Hook and Hobbs interjecting themselves. I liked this match. One thing I will say, and I would caution them against doing it again, they're going to do these cinematic matches, and it was kind of a cinematic match, but it also wasn't. It was weird. Kill the commentary. There's no need to have the commentary. You can hear the wrestlers talk. It's just weird for them, like, commenting on like what's essentially a movie. It becomes like Mystery Science Theater.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that, but aside from that, I thought it was really well shot. I thought it looked good. Darby's elbow drop dive looked insane. So
yeah, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was a pretty well produced little scene. So if you don't like the cinematic style matches, I don't think this is going to win you over. If you do like them, this is one of the better ones. So, enjoy. And if you're a Sting fan, you got to see Sting not look old and terrible. So that's nice.
Yeah, right. All right. So we got.
And then we got the main event. So.
Yeah, we talked about that. So, okay. Let's go into Dynamite. So we had some interesting things. We had Moxley and Eddie Kingston cut a promo I thought was as good of a job as they could have done, with Eddie, kind of like talking about PTSD and the anxiety. And like, I thought that was fine. Like you got to get out of it some way. There's three options of what you can do. You can, like basically write a story that makes sense. You can like mind wipe people and just show an altered clip that makes it seem like the explosion was a big deal and they did get hurt, or you can just ignore it. None of those are great, really, and they all have their drawbacks. So the fact that they did this way, I thought they covered really nicely for this. They had that interview later where it was supposed to be Christian Cage, and then the broom dancers came out, which is great because Tony, who's seen Kenny's entrance for like 8 months, goes, Christian? He doesn't say that, but he like looks around like, is this Christian? And of course it's Kenny. And Kenny and the Good Brothers and Callis come out and they say, hey, this was a win-win for us, because if we leave with the title and then John Moxley is blown up, or we leave with the title and Eddie Kingston and John Moxley don't get there to go down the blades of glory and they look like idiots, and we win. So we win either way. It was a great way to kind of put the heat onto Kenny and Callis, and then Eddie came out and they were just total dicks to him, including the brilliant line when Kenny says, 69 me, Don. That made me fucking burst out laughing. I thought that was hilarious. That's probably the funniest thing Kenny Omega's ever said. I thought that was great. And then Christian comes out and stands off against Kenny. And I will say this, Christian had really cool body language. And what I mean by that, not that I need to tell you guys what body language is, but I think it was TLC 2014. Yes, it was. And it was Dolph Ziggler against Luke Harper for the Intercontinental title. And I think it was Steve Austin and Meltzer were watching the show, and they did like a review of it. And Austin, who one of the best of all time, one of the greatest psychologists of all time, as far as from a worker standpoint, he talked about one of the things that he liked Dolph Ziggler, but Dolph loves selling, and he's selling so much. And at the end of the match, he's on top of the ladder, and then he's on the floor, and both times his legs are kind of wobbly. He's not really standing up straight. He's kind of weak looking. And Austin's that's one of the things, if I were telling him, forget the selling at that point, just stand straight and tall and convey an image of power. And he's like, that really will get you over as a babyface. And I thought about that. I'm like, there is an inherent weakness to that. I understand he's selling. He might be going for the babyface, underdog route, but there is something about having your legs underneath you and just standing firm like a tree. And Christian did that with Kenny. And I mean, that's the image he wanted to convey. He wanted to be a guy who wasn't backing down to Kenny. So I actually thought he did really well there. But
yeah, I'm still not super excited for the prospect of a Christian Omega title match, but
I don't think the match is. I mean, I think Kenny's great, and Kenny's one of the best workers in the world. I mean, like Christian's a good worker, but he wasn't even the best worker when he was in his prime. Like, I mean, can you think of a great Christian match off the top of your heads? I think of like Christian and Jericho at Mania 20. I'm trying to think. Do you have any?
Like his stuff with Jericho, some of his matches with Angle and TNA, some of his matches with AJ and TNA, but that's in TNA, and he's working with guys who many would say were the best workers in that company, which would be AJ and Angle. So
yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah, he had the TLC matches, but that's not like a Christian match any more than it's like a Devon Dudley match,
Yeah, right, exactly.
And
anything, like if I recall, weren't Edge and Christian, like part of the idea was they didn't do as many of the death-defying spots, and that's how they won all the time.
Maybe that's probably your headcanon, but
that might be my headcanon.
I mean, I like that idea. I like that they won like all of them. That was always like very funny to me and cool. I mean, I'm really not trying to trash the guy. Like I know we probably have during this entire show, but he's like if you're expecting like a super worker match between these two, like it's going to be like Omega and Ibushi, I don't think you're going to get that.
No. And if God forbid Christian wins,
I don't think they do that. Yeah, I mean if they have this Thanos Infinity Stone storyline for Kenny, I mean, and it looks like part of that may come to fruition at Rebellion in Impact. Mm-hmm. I think there's too much invested in this right now. I mean, he's going to have a title from AAA, a title from AEW, and a title possibly from Impact. I don't think they're going to jeopardize that, but I could be wrong. Let's see here. Hey, we had another squash. Cody killed somebody. That was great.
That was good to see. And he's going to be feuding with Pentagon. And I'm like, okay, I'm down for that because I really like Cody. I really like Penta, and let's see what they can do. And it'll be nice to see Penta kind of break free from the tag team role a little bit and get to shine as a single stars like we saw in Lucha Underground.
And this was the best he's looked since Lucha Underground, I think. There was a lot of like strength with him. There were a lot of people projecting strength on this show, but I think that'll be good. I think there'll be Cody. I know people are split down on the middle for Cody. I've continually thought Cody's like, one of the best wrestlers in the world for many, many years. But if Cody can tone down some of Penta's like house show shit, like what I mean is like, oh, I'm going to do the stupid glove toss. I'm going to do this taunt and the Cero Mato too many times. Like if he can tone that down and get him to actually tell a more coherent story like he used to in Lucha Underground, I think that's win-win. And hopefully Penta like takes it with him a little bit, because I think that could be great for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We had Ethan Page and Lee Johnson, and Ethan Page had like fucking weird defense chanting going on because TNT's audio screwed up and it was weird. And I was like, I was doing something else. I think I was like folding clothes or something. And I'm like, why is there music playing? I thought it was his gimmick for a second. Like, is he doing like a New Jack bit? But then I'm like, oh no, this is not good.
Production woes have not been kind to AEW the last couple of days.
No, they have not. Tony Schiavone.
At least it was during this match and not a big one. Like if this had happened during the final segment, they'd have been double fucked. But
yeah. Schiavone interviewed Sting, and we got Archer coming out saying, "Hey, I'm being forgotten." And then they walked away, and Sting's like, "Oh, guess my interview time's over now. See you guys later."
Yeah, are they going to relive their Halloween Havoc 92 feud?
Oh, yeah. Spin the wheel.
30 years later, Jake's back for revenge. Spin the wheel, make the deal.
You know what I never noticed with not with Sting, but about Sting? There's there's a on my Monday Night Wars rewatch, whenever Rick Rude is on commentary, he just constantly talks about how Sting ended his career.
Which did happen. It was that match. I believe it was in Japan that where Rude got hurt. And
was it Japan or was it was Spring Stampede?
I believe it was Japan, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah, but he just keeps going. He's like Sting ended my career. He broke my neck. Nobody cares about that. I'm like, oh man, this guy. Which I think Rude legitimately disliked Sting due to that. So I'm assuming it was
probably. I'll say this though: 98 Rick Rude. He's kind of like the WCW equivalent of like 97 Brian Pillman, where it's like, man, he's got so much intensity and he's so badass. If he could just be what he was a few years ago physically. Yep. You'd have a hell of a star here.
Yeah.
Boss Man was that way too. Like 99 Boss Man, one of the best heels around. Too bad that he was so far past his prime physically that, they couldn't justify pushing him higher than he was.
Yeah. He Rude was making a comeback, right? He wanted to wrestle. He was just like, Bischoff, pay my Lloyds of London policy so I can get that money too.
Yeah, I think there was some of that going on. But I had heard, he did want to make a comeback, but he was also dead the next year. So it's kind of like, how close was he to making that comeback? I don't know.
And I want to also point out that Rick Rude was 39 in 1998. He's like 8 years younger than Christian is right now.
Yeah.
So like, and I understand that like 1998 and 2021 are very different in terms of health and conditioning, and like people can last longer, and like I get that, but like still, that's just like, I don't know. It's just funny to think about, right?
It's crazy. They last longer. And, I remember people telling me, it's like, oh, you better enjoy AJ Styles while he lasts, because he's not going to last long with an in-ring style like that. And I'm like, homeboy's still working, so
he is. And what is he, like 44?
He's got to be around that age, I think. Like
he's 43. He'll be 44 in June.
Yeah.
When you remember that AJ was in WCW, you realize how long he's been around.
Yeah, and Daniels has been around even longer than that.
Yeah.
And he can still, to his credit, he can still hit the BME.
Yeah. We had Matt Jackson and Ray Phoenix open the show. This was fine. It was good. It was like a spot festy thing, but it was fine.
It was an indie match.
Yeah, it really was.
It's like, I can't believe we've gotten to a point where the flip pile driver is like, it's like, it's like a super kick and a DDT now, which were also finishers back in the day. It's like, how much farther can we go with this?
Yeah.
Like, it makes you wonder, like 20 years from now, we'll be seeing shooting star presses and people kicking out of those and nobody cares.
I feel like that happens, but yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, people kick out of Canadian destroyers, so,
Nothing would surprise me anymore.
Yeah. All right. So the final segment. We had the Inner Circle War Council. I thought this was one of the best segments they've done. I have one minor complaint. I'll get to it, but this was fantabulous.
They got me twice, and that's so rare. They totally got me, and then they got me again. I was like, wow, this is really, really good. They did something good here.
So they so the night before they said, oh, we're gonna have a war council, and Jericho's like, I got a lot of things on my mind, and then MJF is like, me too, Chris. And your obvious thought is that, oh, here comes the time MJF is gonna usurp Jericho from the Inner Circle. And they come out there and Jericho's like, oh, we got to redirect, we got to reposition, hey, maybe we even add a new member. And MJF is like, hey, I think we need to lose a member. And then Sammy comes out and Sammy says, hey, and Jericho doesn't want to hear from him, and Sammy says, hey, just listen to me. And he shows a video, and this was fantastic because Sammy goes in and he puts like a phone or a hidden camera in their room. And then you see MJF come in and he says to Hager and Santana and Ortiz, he's like, okay, guys, we are going to take down Jericho. You guys in? And they're like, yeah. And this is so great because there is not a second in my mind where I'm pulled out of my suspension of disbelief is broken. If you go back, and I mean, we can do any single WWE segment, but if you go to one of WWE's most celebrated storylines, which is Batista turning on Triple H, there is that scene that everybody thinks is so great. And it's Triple H and Ric Flair as, Bowser and Dr. Robotnik talking about their evil plan and about how they've been trying to get rid of Dave Batista and they're twirling their mustaches and everything. And I mean, and then Dave Batista is, he's hiding around the corner and he's listening to them and he's got them. Nobody seems to fucking notice that there's a goddamn camera that's broadcasting this into the arena that all of these participants are in right now. So, okay.
And the commentators are commenting on it too.
Yeah. So once again, inconsistent rules. This was great because it was like, how did the camera get in there? Sammy put it in there. Okay, great. I'm here with you. Like, you just have to be a little bit less lazy when you're writing these things. So then MJF is like, hey, sorry that you had to find out that way. Get them, boys. And they walk towards him, and then they turn back around towards MJF, and Jericho's like, you think we don't talk to each other? You're fired from the Inner Circle. We're going to kick your ass. And this was great because the Inner Circle doesn't come off as dopes. They're still smart. They're not idiots. They can see what we all saw, which was MJF buddying up to each of them and trying to get them to open up. And they saw it too, because we saw it. And then they're about, which is a great twist right there. And then they're about to go for MJF, and MJF is like pleading and crying. And you're like, wow, this is probably the comeuppance. They're going to give it to him right here. And the lights go out, and out comes Tully Blanchard and FTR, Sean Spears, Wardlow, and I think that's it, right?
I think that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And FTR smashes a bottle over Hager's head. They take out Hager first because he's the most physically dominant. Then they beat the shit out of the Inner Circle. MJF is sitting off to the side in the back. He looks like this Machiavellian dictator. They hold down Jericho's hand and smash it with his nice shoe. And then Wardlow, he hits him with the diamond ring. Then Wardlow power bombs Jericho off the stage, and they stand tall. I thought this was great for multiple reasons. I'll say the thing I didn't like about it. I think the lights out gimmick is used way too much in AEW. I thought if they used it here, it would have been fine, but they use it way too much. I do wonder, character-wise, what would have happened if they didn't. The Inner Circle didn't discover that MJF was plotting against them. Would he just have kicked Jericho out, and then the guys would have been in the back or whatever? But he had a Batman-esque plan where all these things go through. I would have liked to know that, but
it was all part of the plan.
Yeah. So it's great because, I mean, MJF has taken some losses, but he's never really lost his heat. From when he first got here to when he turned on Cody to when he challenge Moxley. There's always a next step for him, and this is another next step to that next level of creating another layer to him, and him having a stable and him truly being in charge of it and feuding with a babyface Inner Circle is really interesting. And I mean that could be some great stuff right there. And I just thought it was so well done. I thought it was one of the best closing angles they've done in a very long time.
Yeah, it was great stuff. And we've already, with all the buildup that they've done with this thing, we already have Sammy Hagar and Wardlow who hate each other. Sammy and MJF already hate each other. You've got FTR who can feud with the tag team in Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz. And you've got MJF and Jericho as the two leaders. There's already a lot that's been put into this and a lot of potential for the future that I'm ready for all of this. I thought this was really well done.
Yeah. And somebody pointed out there's an interview that he did at one point where he praises both FTR and Sean Spears as a few of the people he respects. This was in November. And I remember when him and Sean Spears were gambling and betting on the matches early in the COVID era. Yeah, this is like some great writing here. What I thought was a low point for AEW, they come back to a huge high, and the narrative has now been, wow, we got this new cool stable. The Inner Circle are faces. Like this is interesting.
And it makes me wonder if they're going to start getting ready to do that War Games match again, because they were set to do it in March, and then
I was set to be at that show.
Yeah, I know. Goddamn, the things that were lost. But I think now, we've been into the COVID thing for over a year now, and I think maybe they thought, you know what, let's just go ahead and do the War Games match. Let's do it, and this might be their setup for that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we're missing?
I don't think so. It was an AEW centered.
It was an AEW week, yeah.
For multiple reasons, obviously.
Yes. We're gonna have a new video up. One of our top 5 videos coming up soon. It's the top 5 worst WrestleMania main event builds. So look out for that. But yeah, just like, comment, subscribe, guys. Always appreciate it. Really does help us out. But for myself, Eric Clancy, alongside Patrick Kelly, we are
signing off.